All right, so this is the SCX10 I'm going to be working on today. This is my Frankenstein build. I got used I've seen pictures of it, but really I got hit pretty hard because the pictures didn't show a lot of wrong parts installed terribly, shafts in the wrong shocks, all kinds of stuff. So had to go through the entire truck to get everything running right and the kit actually working properly. So today what we're going to be doing is putting all of these parts into the truck. So we got high clearance links from SAMIX, also the bent steering link. We got RC four-wheel drive portals for the front and the rear. We got aluminum axles with Hot Racing Diff covers, a diff protector, shock and link mounts that have multiple mounting points. So we're gonna go through all of these things, and oh yeah, the shocks are the dreaded 100 millimeter. A lot of people tell you not to put 100 millimeter shocks in, but I'm gonna show you how you can. And with that, first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna do some baseline testing. So we're gonna measure how far the travel is in the front, what the ride height is, what the maximum travel is, just so we can get a baseline to see where we're gonna be going from here. Also, let's get a good look at how the links lay out underneath the truck, because we're gonna be changing those for some high clearance. And when doing so, we're going to be paying particular attention to eliminating the exposed drive shaft. Now, even with stock links on, there is a teeny bit of exposed drive shaft. So we're going to try and get the high clearance links on with at minimum we want no more exposure than what it has on stock, preferably less exposure. So that's the goal for underneath the truck. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to get started with the measuring the truck out. Now, in order to do these measurements, I went ahead and got myself a school ruler. We're going to put it onto inches, and instead of putting something underneath the tire, we're going to see how high we can lift the tire up before the rear tire comes off the ground, and we're going to measure from the bottom of the tire. I don't want to have any compression of the tire to muffling up our measurement. As you can see though, if I put like a LiPo battery underneath the tire, we can actually get it so that the truck is still sitting on the ground and I have clearance on this. But if you notice, the tire is being squished. So I'm going to take my measurements from the bottom of the tire without it being squished so we can compare the before and afters. Alright, so let's see. On inches, let's just get it up there. So, right, I need to hold it from the top of the tire so that my holding of the tire doesn't squish the rubber at all. So we have it right here, and it looks like it's a hair above 5 inches. Yeah, we got one line above 5 inches. So first tire is one line above 5 inches. I guess it's 5 inches and a 1/16 or an 1/8, I'm not sure, whatever. And now we're gonna do the back side. Alright, so on the back side, same deal. We gotta make sure I'm lifting it up from the top so I don't cause any compression on the tire. Get our measurement out, and right at the point where the front tire is coming off the ground. So I just want to get that in the shot so you don't think I'm fuzzing around. Okay, so in the back, it's actually a tad less. It's a quarter inch below 5 inches. So we're talking 4 inches and 3/4 inch for the rear. So I actually have a little bit more travel in the front than I do in the rear right now. I'm changing all that. All right, so now we're gonna see. Now we're gonna measure the maximum travel going up. Or we'll do the ride height first. So, static ride height. We're gonna go to the bottom of the bumper, and it's 2 lines over 3.5 inch. All right. And in the rear, I have a different bottom on the rear. So you know what, we're gonna measure from the top, just because I have a bottom on the rear that drops a whole lot lower, but the top's at the same point. So we have 4 1/4 minus 1 line. I'm pretty sure it's a 16th. And then we have 4 1/4 minus 1 line. So we have the same exact ride height front and rear. We got 5 inches and a 16th in the front, and we got 4 inches and 3/4 articulation in the back. And all right, so let's see what the maximum height is gonna be. So I'm just trying to get it where it's just about to leave the ground, but I kind of want it front and back the same, not tilted at all. So we're talking 4 3/4. So 4 3/4 in the front and 4 3/4 in the rear. Oh, nice. All right, so now we got our baseline for the setup as it is right now. I'm gonna take it from there, start doing some work, and hopefully we can get more articulation, more clearance, less exposure of the pinion, much more clearance with the portals too. So I mean, there's gonna be a lot of stuff going on, and as it is right now, when you see I lift the tire up, it just perfectly goes into the wheel well. In order to get that with these tires on, I had to do a body lift. Not that big, but it's obviously noticeable. You should be able to see that. Hopefully with the portals on, that's gonna put hopefully the same amount of lift on the everything from the axles up, that I'm able to drop the body back down to normal and have it sit inside the wheel wells the same way. So hopefully we're able to achieve all of these different goals with what we got going on today. So we got the rear axle done. She looks mighty nice, and I'm just gonna give a little bit of an update on what we're gonna be doing with these links here, because as you notice, I'm using metal rod ends, not the plastic ones that come with the kit. Basically, I got these ones here that this is the steering linkage. Now, if you notice on the stock steering linkage, the mounting point is offset a little bit from the center. So I got basically an offset center rod end to match that. And when it comes to the links for the suspension, I've got them all with the same bend that comes on the rear upper mounts in the back. So I'm gonna see how this runs using a rod end on each end on all 4 of the suspension links to see how that helps improve articulation. Now, when it comes to mounting these to the actual rod ends themselves, the way that I'm doing this is I'm using, set this up here. Now the rod ends themselves have washers, and in order to put these rod ends on the SAMIX shafts, you need 2 washers per shaft in order to make them align properly. Now, when it comes to clocking the diffs, the way that I'm going to do it is I'm just going to be adding washers to the top links to get the angle that I want on the diff. Now, on the bottom suspension links, I'm actually going to use the tapered part off the original links. The reason I'm going to do that is so I don't want there to be a catch point. The SAMIX links, they taper off towards the end. So if you have the bulky rod end with the taper part, you have a catch point here. So I don't want any catch points on the lower links. I'm going to leave them off on the top links and on the steering links, but for the bottom links, I'm going to make sure to keep those on there. I'm also going to be using Loctite to make sure that everything snugs together. With the washers, it allows you to actually put a little snug on it. And if you're not able to get the position that you want, you can add a washer which will allow you to adjust the position some more. So you just got to make sure that you have both sides the exact same. So these are the 2 lower rear end links. So I've made sure that I have both these angled rod ends on the exact same angle, same amount of washers, so everything should line up properly. Now, comparing the SAMIX links, that is this one here, to the original ones that are stainless steel, these are titanium, the weight difference is ridiculous. This stock pin, that is heavy as shit, is lighter than this steering link with both rod ends on. That's twice as long. This thing is heavy. So this should help the overall weight of the kit too. I'm just gonna get through the rest of the build, and I'll show you what this looks like once I got the links on the kit. Alright, so I got the last portal cover taken off. I'm just gonna I want to point out something very, very important to anybody who's going to be getting the RC 4-wheel drive portals. This kit, they look absolutely beautiful. Everything is super solid. When you're building the kit, there's no Loctite in any of the screws. So you got to put Loctite on all the screws on all 4 portals to make sure you don't lose those little tiny screws, because they will just back out and be gone. Secondly, the little pinhole there to put the little pin to drive the hex, I had to file the inside of that in order to get the pin to go through. It took 5 minutes, not a lot of work, but just something to keep in mind that you might need to do the same thing. Also, before I close up the case and put Loctite on this last one, what I'm going to be doing is just taking a tiny bit of marine grease and popping that in there. Not a lot, just a little bit. Perfect. And that's it. So just make sure that before you run these things, you Loctite the screws, and you don't have to, because there is a little bit of grease in there. But personally, I like to make sure my stuff is nicely greased so it lasts long. So I added a little bit of marine grease in there with it. Alright, so what I'm going to be doing right now is comparing the Hot Racing shocks with the Icon shocks. Now the Hot Racing is 100 millimeters and the Icons are 90 millimeters. And you'll get a lot of talk about not upgrading to a 100 millimeter shock because it's going to mess up the way the kit performs. And for the most part, this is true. Now, The real reason to upgrade to a bigger shock is to get more travel. The only problem with that is when you get more travel, you also have, in order to get more travel, you need to have a longer shaft, and a longer shaft takes a bigger body. So what happens is when you have a longer shock, most of the time you have a body that is also a bit longer. Now you notice here, the body of the Hot Racing comes significantly lower than the Icon shock, and there you'll notice that the Hot Racing shock significantly goes low, has a longer shaft than the Icon shock. So that means this one actually has more up and down travel. As you can see, it also goes all the way to the top. There's no stopper, bump stop, or anything like that. What this basically is going to do is it's going to reduce how much you can compress the shock. So on an up travel, the wheel won't go up as high. However, depending on the shock hoops that you have, you might have different rows of mounts. Now, if you notice here, my Icon shock in the front is at the lowest mount. So if I move the shock up 2 mounts, that's going to actually reduce how much compression I'm losing due to the body of the shock. You take that into account when I'm increasing the travel here. So as it is right now, I can't move the shock any more up because on full compression, my diff is hitting the panhard bar. Use these shocks. What I'm going to do is I'm going to mount them on the top row of shock mounts. So this is going to take away some of my loss due to the larger shock body, and it's going to allow me to still take advantage of the larger travel, further travel distance of these shocks to get more articulation. Now you might be thinking, well, what's one or 2 millimeters difference going to do? 1 or 2 millimeters difference at the shock actually makes significant difference when it comes to at the wheel. So we took all our measurements before at the beginning of the video, and we're going to do our comparisons afterwards, and this should make a significant difference as to how much travel we have. And we're trying to mount it so that we're not losing as much up travel as we would have had before. And we are at the moment of truth. I've gotten everything taken care of. All the overhaul upgrades are done. So we've got the RC 4-wheel drive portal axles installed. We've got the aluminum diffs, HR diff covers, aluminum link mounts, and diff case protector, steering kit put in, 100 millimeter shocks put in. Got the SAMIX link kit put on, and I haven't really tweaked the shocks too much. I did play around with the mounting point to get it exactly how I liked it. I thought originally I was going to be using the top mount, but instead in the front I'm using the middle mount, and in the rear I'm using the bottom mount. I was surprised. I put it all the way to the top, and I was hitting the pan bar on the differential the exact same way that I do with the Icon shock. So I'm not actually losing any travel on the upswing there like that. She's got loads of articulation. I mean, I'm guessing I gained at least 1/4 to 1/2 inch. We're gonna find out. A few notes. It took a long time to get the high clearance links the way that I like them, and to get the diffs clocked as close to where I like them as I could for the moment. I ran out of washers, so I couldn't clock the rear diff a little bit more, and I ran out of ability to reduce the size of the lower links to clock the front diff the way I like it. However, I will say that the kit went in, you know, the reason it was so hard, I think, was because a lot of it had to do with my aluminum rod ends. Because they're aluminum rod ends, you can't just squeeze them into the plastic and make them tight. You have to do it with Loctite, so you have to do a lot of adjusting and fitting, adjusting, and making sure that the bar is fixed and it's not loose at all. And wow, I finally got it done. I mean, I'll be honest, I put quite a few hours into all this. So I guess let's get to the measurements, and I'll do a recap at the end of what I think about everything. Alright, so first measurement we're going to do is going to be ride height. Where's my ruler? Alright. So first measurement is going to be ride height in the front. Static. What are we looking at? We're looking at a 16th minus 4 3/4 in the front. We are looking at a 16th above 3/4 in the back. So I guess there's a 2 millimeter forward right there. I'm not actually gonna take that away. I'm gonna leave that the way it is because I don't mind the way it's standing right now. Let's see maximum up travel. Hold on a second. Good. Okay, so we're looking at 5 inches. We're looking at one line below 5.5. So 1/16 below 5.5. Go back to over here. Do the same. And we're looking at 1/16 below 5 3/4. All right. So now the big one that everybody is probably interested in is how much more articulation I was able to get out of all this. So again, I'm not putting it on anything. I'm getting the measurement from the bottom, so there's no question about the tire being squished at all. So right there, I'm at 5 and a 16th under a quarter. So 5 and a 16th under a quarter. And in the back, we're gonna have five and a half and 2/16, 5.5 and 2/16. A 1/4 inch more travel basically in the rear than the front, but I think I have overall more travel on the kit altogether. I was able to gain some articulation. I was able to gain some clearance, a bucket load of clearance with the high rise, the high clearance links coupled with the portal axles, and man, the way the suspension just feels and moves feels great. So this is the reason why I did my measurements with the tires in the air and without them actually going onto something. Because as you can see here, I'm able to get my tire up onto this grease tube, and everything is still on the ground over here. And now remember, my travel in the front was, I think, 5 1/4. Well, if you look at this, my measurement is basically at 6 inches. So if I were to make my measurement based on what I'm able to post the kit up on, it's going to be 6 inches. But without, that's going to depend a lot on the tires that you're using and the foams that you're using, etc. So that's the reason why I did the bottom of the tire, so it's not mixed up with, or it's not distorted by how much tire compression I have. You actually saw the actual travel level. And as you can see here, if I want to post it up, I can post it up on something 6 inches. All right. One thing I learned when I built the Icon shocks is that at first, when I first got them, put them together, I couldn't get them to not leak, and I couldn't get them to not stick when you initially, like if it sits for like 5-6 minutes and then you try and squeeze the shock, there'd be that little stick. And it really upset me. At the time, I was just thinking, okay, forget these shocks, I'm gonna get something new. And it took me actually a long time before I actually got another set of shocks, a little bit over a year. And in the year, I just ran the truck with the shocks the way they were. They were leaking at first and they stuck at first. However, a year later, they stopped leaking and they stopped sticking and they just work beautifully. So when I did these shocks here, when I built the shocks, well, they're already built. I basically didn't do nothing except fill them with oil, close them up, have a nice day. I didn't do any grease to stop any leaking from the bottom, and they do stick a little bit when you first push them. I'm just gonna do the same thing as I did with the Icon shocks. I'm just gonna run it like this and see if it helps and it stops and everything is good after a couple of months. And if it's not, then I'll deal with it then. But for the most part, they seem to work and behave exactly like the Icon shocks, which is exactly what I wanted. Because the Icon shocks, they do work great. They just make me mad. I just don't like them. There's a ton of things about them that I don't like. And at the end of the day, for all the reasons that I don't like them, it doesn't matter because they actually do work very, very well for 90mm shocks. But these Hot Racing shocks, in my opinion, look a million times better, work just as good, and I was able to score more articulation out of them. So it's a no-brainer for me. Those Icon shocks are now storage. Steering link is great. I get more travel than I had before without the steering link in. And one thing I was worried about was whether or not it was going to be hitting the diff protector that I have there. But thankfully, at full travel in both directions, while it looks very, very close, there is a teeny gap between the two where they do not touch. So that worked out beautifully too. There's also an extra part that I had in the SAMIX kit. I'm pretty sure this would have been the steering link if I had a diff mounted servo for steering, because it's way too small for me to use on this kit here. So I'm not 100%, but I think the SCX10s, not the 10.2, came with a diff mounted servo, so this probably would have been perfect for that kit, but not this kit. Even though they said this kit was for the 10.2. Anyways, neither here nor there. So yeah, everything is pretty much done for this right now. I mean, there's still more things I need to do to the truck, but I mean this upgrade, this overhaul, I think was a great success. So I really hope if you guys are interested in getting these parts, that I was able to shed some light and some information on how they're gonna work, how they're gonna look, how they're gonna feel, anything to help you out when making that decision. Other than that, stay tuned for the next build. Is most likely gonna be putting together parts of my drag car. I've got a custom carbon fiber chassis coming in, a bunch of carbon fiber parts and aluminum parts to go together to make this a street eliminator drag car that hopefully will drag some ass. But we'll have to get it built and we'll see after that. I do still have a few more things to do on the SCX10. Like I said before, I gotta lower the body. More, all kinds of stuff coming up.